I love dogs. I'm always helping dogs and saving animals, 3 rescues, and I have a deaf dog myself. So, he minds better than the hearing dogs. I taught him all sign language myself. He's 120 pounds. He cannot take a bad picture. He'd be better than me on camera. His name is Saint. He's just better every day. I'm about to tear up. He's so sweet. Another tip is if you are going to list a house, say you have somebody calls you that wants to sell their rent house. Let me tell you where I start first. The tenant. I can't tell you how many houses I've sold with the tenant being in there. I call the tenant first and say, look, let's see if you can qualify. And I just jump right on it. It works. I sold one on Smitherman not too long ago, and he had 3 roommates. So he bought the house, was paying less than he was in rent, and had 2 roommates paying the rest of the rent. So it covered more than half of his note. That's a hot tip. What lights me up is when the customer's happy, when the deal goes smooth and we get to the closing table. Some agents don't go to the closing, and I can't imagine. That is where the magic happens. That is where everybody is happy and they're exchanging stories about the home and the keys and the memories, and it's just a really special time. And when it all goes smooth, that's where all the hard work just accumulates. You see it right there. And there's been some great stories at closing tables. If you can't change, you can't grow. The bottom line, you have to be able to change in this business and in life in general, I believe. I like to take on a challenge, so sometimes I get some crazy clients, but I do think outside the box. I try to make it work creatively, however that is. Whether it's a loan process, going to a bank instead of a mortgage company, or there's some new stuff going on, some DSCR loans, I think I'm saying that right, where the investor can go in and claim the rent and that he qualifies that way. It's pretty interesting, so it's kind of newish. I did a couple of those. So I'm always trying to be creative to help the client. We don't knock on doors as much as we used to, but we still do, because what if there's a house your buyer wants? I'll go knock on the door, and I used to be scared to do that. My dad took me aside one day. He said, let me get this straight. You'll go knock on every door on the whole street trying to find the owner that this dog you found, but you won't go talk to them about selling their house. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. That makes sense. And then I was kind of over it. The call reluctance, they used to call it, when you were afraid to call a buyer or seller and get yourself out there. The dog kind of cured me of that. Work ethic is key. You've got to stay consistent and work and keep calling. And I just have a little routine where I'll get up and call. And gosh, I'm like everybody else. Sometimes it gets thrown out the window when the day started with problems, but I try to get up and call. And calling expireds is a great thing to do. For our company, I don't know, there's not a lot right now, but for new people starting, that's a good way to start. They've already been listed, they're tired of their realtor, they didn't get it sold, and that's a good place for a new person to start, is to call an expired listing and get it back on the market. And call them FSBOs, don't be scared of them, they're just people. It is scary sometimes, but you just jump right in and make them like you. FSBO is a for sale by owner. So when they put a for sale by owner sign out, we call them FSBOs, but they're trying to sell it themselves. I'll call one, especially like on my mom's street. I'm over there all the time, so there's always, I think I've sold 4 houses on that street because they're so close, and I'll just pick up the phone and call. I'll just stop and call right then. That's the time to do it, because if you wait, you might not do it. For sale by owner is not as educated, obviously, and they're probably 9 times out of 10 wanting too much for their house. That's true so many times. I ask them about their property and what they're trying to achieve if they're moving out of town, and what their goal is. And then I tell them that I've been doing this for a long time, and that I know people that buy houses everywhere, and would they be okay if I had a buyer? Could I call them? And another thing I do is I go ask them to look at the property. That's a great point to help them out. And I used to have a little packet. I need to get it back together. It was a little packet I put together for this for sale by owner that had like a log for them to show really what they've got to do, which is log for open houses, costs they need to negotiate, a list of utility companies, and it had a little form in there, which a lot of people don't know this. You can send to your mortgage company that the mortgage company has the right to charge you 2 months interest if they want to. They don't always do that, but they have the right. So if you send them this little letter, it lets them know you're selling the house and they can't overcharge you. So that's another thing I give them. So I kind of overwhelm them with stuff, but I do help them, and then usually they wind up calling. I've actually had a lady use the program and sell a house a long time ago, and then I wound up selling 3 houses to her family members and 1 to her. So just one little contact can generate business. It doesn't have to even be the house you're calling them about.